Good evening and good afternoon to everyone else. Good evening to those who are in China, and good afternoon to the rest of the world. My name is Edmond Sanganyado, and I'm interested in understanding ways that we can foster scientific excellence among researchers from Africa. Today, I want to talk about how to write a critical review. To begin off, I want to share with you about the story behind two of my publications, the publications that I wrote in 2018. I wrote two reviews, one in environmental pollution and the second one in science of the total environment. Now, it has been 2 years since I wrote these reviews. The review in environmental pollution has been read around 2,000 times, according to Mendeley. And it has been cited around 13 times, according to Google Scholar. But the review in Science of the Total Environment, there is something interesting. It has been read 4,000 times and cited 84 times in a space of 2 years. And this made me wonder, like, why? Why the big difference? I wrote these two reviews almost the same time, and their number of times they've been viewed, number of times they've been cited is totally different. What could be the reason? And today we want to uncover the reasons behind the disparities between these two reviews. So to uncover these reviews, I want us to learn why do we write a review. So in this talk, we'll learn some of the main causes of the differences between my environmental pollution review and my science of the total environment review. And to start the ball rolling, we'll first look at why people write reviews, move on to how to prepare a review, and then finally, we are going to learn how to actually write a review. So from my conversations with people at conferences and in meetings and the like, I've noticed that there are probably 4 different reasons why most people write reviews, right? The most popular reason I have heard is reviews boost your number of citations. When you write your review, you are sure going to get many, many citations. Like, for example, that paper that I wrote in 2018, right now it is 84 citations. So reviews can boost your citation. And the other thing that I have heard people is when you write your review, you increase the number of publications that you have. But I still have questions regarding that. Should you write a review just for numbers? Isn't life more important than an H index? When I started my postdoc here in China in 2017, I wanted to learn a new research area. I was moving from strictly environmental chemistry, and now I was moving into more of marine biology. I didn't know a lot about marine biology. So I thought, okay, the best idea that I can have is let me write a review about this new topic that my new lab works on. So I wrote the review, and that review is the environmental pollution review that has fewer number of views and fewer citations. So why should you write a review? Why should you write a review? You know, here's the thing. My review in environmental pollution, right, it's technically accurate, but it lacks the nuance that can only come from an expert in the field. Someone with expertise in a research topic has the acumen to organize, assess, critique the published research. And they have been in the field long enough that they can easily identify patterns and trends in literature. And they have read a lot of literature so much that they can synthesize existing data in an unbiased manner. So now, when you look at this, is that when you are writing a review, right, you need to be really upbeat with the recent developments in that specific field. And you need to be really someone who has expertise in that field. So the question becomes, can an early career researcher, write a review? Someone who's finishing up their PhD, someone who has just finished their PhD, can they write a review? The short answer is yes, because when you engage in your PhD work, you conducted some primary research that could be foundational for writing that particular review, right? And alternatively, you can write a review under the guidance of a senior researcher. So it is important that even as early career researchers, we engage in writing literature reviews, because they are really helpful in organizing and evaluating the current literature. So the question now becomes, what is a good review? What makes a review when you read it and say, oh, wow, this is an excellent review? What is a good review? I think there are 4 things that can make or break a review. Number 1, who wrote the review? You know, if the person who is writing the review hasn't done original research on that topic, we are rest assured that they are not going to do justice to that field. Number 2, how relevant is the topic? You know, you might be an expert in the area, but the topic is not timely right now. I'll give you an example. That review that I co-authored in Science of the Digital Environment. One of the reasons why it has been read widely and cited a lot, and since we published it in 2018 up to now, it has been selected by Web of Science as a hot paper 3 times. And I think the main reason why it has been really received well is because it was a timely review. The topic was still hot, right? We were looking at rare earth elements, and we were proposing something new, that we need to classify them as emerging contaminants. So it was something new that was coming into the field, and that paper was kind of foundational to the field when people now look at rare earth elements as a potential environmental pollutant. So it was a timely paper. And the other thing that you need, number 3, is your review needs to be balanced and critical. How you write affects whether people are going to read it. If you write a highly biased review, very people are going to be interested in that review. So the craft is so important when you are writing your review. It needs to be balanced, it needs to be critical, right? Then the 4th thing that I believe is really important is, will the review be useful tomorrow? You see, when we are writing a review, we're not only looking at the past, we're not just looking at the rearview mirror, but we look at the rearview mirror because we want to look forward, right? So when you write your review, you want to come up with ideas for future research, right? So the question that when people are trying to write a review for the first time is, so how do I do that? How do I write a review in such a way that I can identify work that can be done in the future, right? So this is what we want to do today. We want to find a systematic way, find a method of looking at literature so that we can identify knowledge gaps, so that we can come up with new ideas as well. Okay, so to start off, I'm going to give you like my top 3 reviews, the top 3 reviews that I read in 2020. And I think these reviews are going to give us a good example of what a good review looks like. At number 3, right, there is a paper published in Annual Reviews by Dr. Oberbeckman and Dr. Labrance. The reason I picked this in the top 3 as number 3 is because this is a critical analytical review. They critique the available literature, and they synthesized the existing data, and they showed us how they identified the literature that they critiqued in their paper. And the other thing they did is all jargon was defined. They didn't just use jargon when they are writing, but they defined the jargon that they were using. And this review is accessible to a PhD student who is starting to look at marine microbial ecology. They can read this and really understand it. And even senior researchers can read this review and find new ideas to explore. So I put it at number 3. At number 2, this is a paper by Dr. Haiwen Tran this is an excellent paper. It was a critical appraisal of current literature. They looked at literature on a specific topic and identified the major shortcomings in that literature. This is really important because most of the times people make assumptions when they're doing their research. They make assumptions when they're making in their experiments, and sometimes those assumptions can have serious consequences on the theories that we formulate, right? So in this paper, I went and looked, in this team, they looked at the literature, evaluated it, and came up with solution of addressing the shortcomings in the literature. So this is an excellent way of writing review. My favorite, the number one, the top review that I read was by Dr. Ninin Maki, right? And this paper was published in Nature Review of Environment of Earth and in the Environment. And the topic was the environmental price of fast fashion. Why did I pick this at the number one? Is because this paper looked at two disparate disciplines and merged them as they were critiquing fashion. They merged two disciplines in such a beautiful way. It is a multidisciplinary work that looks at two different disciplines, and they critique the fashion industry in such a way that we can understand its impact on the environment. It was written in an accessible way. It's readable to a diverse audience. It can be read by policymakers, and it can be understood by experts. This was an excellent review. So when we look at this now, right, when we look at these reviews, right, they give us an idea of something which is important. What are the hallmarks of a good review? These reviews have got those hallmarks that are really important for us. So these three reviews said the hallmarks of a good review is they helped create new research directions, right? The first fashion launched a new research area. What's the impact of fashion on the environment? Then they offered new perspectives, right? And that's, for example, the paper on inconsistencies and mistakes. They gave a new perspective on the problem that is absorption in aqueous environments. So they gave us new perspectives. And the next one was they challenged researchers to close the knowledge gaps. There are knowledge gaps in our research work, and a good review challenges researchers to close those There is a question from someone. Someone asked the question, should I answer now or later? Okay, I'll proceed. So a good review, it challenges researchers to close knowledge gaps. And the next thing is it inspires new lines of research, right? When you write a review, you need to inspire new lines of research. Okay. And the next thing is it offered a platform for impartial comparison of studies. This is really important because you want to compare different studies that have been conducted in different countries by different researchers and sometimes using different sets of equipment or models. So you want to compare them. So a good review offers that platform to compare in an impartial way different studies, right? So it's really important for us to know the hallmarks of a good review so that when we are writing our own reviews, our reviews will have these key characteristics. Okay, so now that we know why people write a review, right? We know that sometimes the reasons are selfish, but the good reason is we need to evaluate literature, we need to propose new research ways, right? And why should we write a review and what a good review looks like? Let's now focus on the process, right? The process, that is the kind of the challenging part, right? Where we put work into it, right? So the way I picture reviewing that has helped me a lot is reviewing, preparing a review is not different from conducting a field study, right? When you conduct a field study, you have your guidelines of what you're going to do when you get in the field. You have got your method, maybe it's sampling method that you are going to use. And all these things, they are clearly written and they are set in such a way that you want to make sure that the results that you're going to obtain, they are reliable, they are valid, they are repeatable, they are ethical, and they are novel. You have all these guidelines set. So it's the same when we are looking at writing a review. A good review needs to be reliable, right? A good review needs to be valid. The conclusions that you're going to derive from your review, they need to be valid, right? The next thing is they need to be repeatable, right? Someone else, when they look at the method that you used in writing your literature review, needs to be able to repeat what you did and come up with the same results. And it needs to be ethical, right? And with the novel part, we need an original idea. So before you start writing a review, right, check if other people haven't written the same thing. Because if other people have written it, that means your review is not really going to contribute anything new, right? So you need to make sure that whatever you're going to do in the process of preparing a review, it's reliable, valid, repeatable, ethical, and novel. So what are the different types of reviews that we have? There are about 14 different types of reviews. And here I just picked 7. The first one is called a state-of-the-art review. With as the name suggests, it's just looking at what is the state of the research topic. What are the studies that have been done, right? And what can we learn from those studies? What are the key leaps that have been done in that particular area? And at the end, you just propose, okay, what are the areas that have not yet been studied, and you propose some future research directions. So that's all with the state-of-the-art review. Then a different type of review is the scoping review. So as the name implies, you're trying to come up with the scope of a particular project. So with this one, it emphasizes sort of with the concepts and the theories and the phenomenon that can be used as a springboard for future work. So you start off with what is known so that you can come up with questions for future work. The goal is to come up with questions that needs to be addressed in the future. I'll give an example of what happened with COVID-19. In terms of environmental science, there is no work that had been done regarding the impact of COVID-19, either the virus itself or the activities that are surrounding it on the environment. There was no work on that. So several scoping reviews were prepared, trying to come up with research questions that needs to be addressed. And this is the right opposite of a mapping review. A mapping review starts with the question, okay, what is the effect of COVID on marine mammals? That is the question that I have. So starting from there now, I begin to look at the concepts that are surrounding maybe the COVID-19, maybe it's pharmaceutical, maybe it's home care, maybe it's the use of masks, or the use of antibiotics or the medicines in the clinic. And you are looking at all the different aspects surrounding that particular question so that you can be able to come up with a theory or propose new research directions. And when you start from a question, you can even identify the knowledge gaps. What is it that we don't know? What is it that we don't know, particularly in this topic? So that's a mapping review. And one review that is often preferred in my particular field and many other fields is the critical review. Because with the critical review, right, you have a specific hypothesis, and you know the theory, you know the concept and the phenomenon in that particular field. Now you look at the literature that has been written. It's really comprehensive. You look at most of the literature that have been written, then you analyze the quality of that literature. Right. The goal in this regard is you want to come up with theories, concepts, right? And you want to come up with a recommendation for future practices or future research. So you read a lot of literature, maybe 300 papers, you weigh those different papers, determine their quality, you compare them, and you come up with some conclusions. And there's the other 2 reviews that are mostly recommended, which are now recommended in different aspects. In health, they mainly use this one, and also in environmental sciences, they are now adopting them. There's the systematic review and the meta-analysis. Now, they take the approach of the critical review, but now they use statistics they use statistical tools to conduct the quality assessment of the literature. So you can see that there are different types of reviews that can be used, and the kind of information that you can get from them is different. So I'm not going to explain everything on this figure. I'll share the file with everyone. It's how we choose which is the best review we can use, right? And we use what's called the SALSA method, which has got 4 aspects. Number 1, there is the search. You want to determine your search goals, right? For example, in critical review, your search goal is you want to identify most of the literature in that field. You want to identify at best all of the literature in that field. That is the search goal. Then in umbrella review, on the other hand, wants to identify all the reviews that have been written on that particular topic. It doesn't focus on primary literature. Then there's the appraisal. How are you going to determine which literature you are going to include in your review? That is the appraisal. For critical review, there is no formal quality assessment that is done, but you can have an inclusion and an exclusion parameters, criteria that you have, that, okay, I'm going to include this data, I'm going to exclude this one. So that's the same with meta-analysis. It's more formalized. You need to, there is a formal way of preparing the inclusion and exclusion criteria. The same with systematic review. Then synthesis is, like as the word, the goal of synthesis in critical analysis, in critical review, is you want to come up with concepts, right? New concepts, and maybe the chronology, the order in which the field is developed. But when it comes to meta-analysis, the goal of synthesis is you want to come up with the graphs and tables that can be used to narrate the development in that field, right? So those are different aspects of different goals for different types of reviews, right? Then, so when you're choosing your review, there is the basic thing that you need to do. Firstly, you need to have a clearly stated search terms, right? Your search terms needs to be clear, and your parameters needs to be clear. If it is a search string, you need to clearly state it. Then the second thing is you need to have predefined inclusion and exclusion criteria. It needs to be predefined. You don't come up with it when you are now writing your literature review. You need to set it out from the word go. Then synthesis and organization, right? The goal in your review, you need to make sure that it comes up with maybe a conceptual or a chronological perception or perspective on that particular review. Then the goal now for analysis is, you know, to come up with concepts and theories. You need to identify goals and research priorities, and sometimes, and also come up with recommendations. So these are kind of the 4 characteristics, right, or 4 objects that you need to really look at when you are coming up with your literature review, when you want to choose which one is the best. Okay, now we know what a good literature review look like. Now we know the criteria that we need to use when we are selecting a review, and now we understand the importance of search. What are the steps that you should take when you are writing a review? So the other steps are like step number 3, step number 4, 5. I'm going to explain them in detail, and 6, I'm going to explain them in detail. So basically, the first step is you need to define your topic, right? And this is important in any type of research that you need. Your topic needs to be you need to define it, right? Your problem. First, you need to pick a topic which is relevant and timely, right? For example, the bioremediation in surface water, or in groundwater, that's a relevant and timely research, right? Because many studies have been conducted on that, but we don't have really a good critical review on that topic, and it needs to be well defined. Like I said, when you're writing a review, you need to be able to pick different literature that have been, different studies that have been conducted on that topic. So it needs to be a well-defined topic. For example, right now you can't really write a good review on COVID-19 in wastewater, right? Because the studies on that topic, there are, I think, 2 only. You can write a review on 2 papers. Then the next thing is search and research. You need, I'm going to talk more about this one, but I'll just mention it right now, that you need a well-defined list of keywords for your study. Then, okay. So then third step is you need to select and deselect literature. Like I said, you need to have a clear criteria for selecting or removing literature from your list. And sometimes we do that using reading the title and then reading the abstract. Then number 4, you need to have data extraction technique. With data extraction, you need to identify the key data that is going to be helpful in your review. You need to extract it, and then the next thing after you extract it is you analyze that data and you synthesize it. Then after that, you need to structure your data, the one that you have analyzed and synthesized. Maybe you arrange it in terms of content or in terms of themes. After that, now you structure, right? Maybe you use a logical structure, or you use sections that are well defined, or you're going to use figures. Then finally, you come up with your conclusions and recommendations. So these are the 7 steps that you need to take when you're writing your review. First, number 1, define the topic. Number 2, search and research. Number 3, select, deselect. Number 4, data extraction. Number 5, analyzing and synthesizing. Number 6, structuring. And number 7, conclusion and recommendation. So let's jump on to step number 1. I'm not going to look at all of them. So step number 1, searching for your literature. I normally use Web of Science and Scopus because they are kind of the most reliable databases in my field. You select your keywords, use the appropriate Boolean search string that is going to give you the data. Then after that, you obtain your data. You have collected the data that you want to use. You collected the data. Now the literature that you want to use, then the next thing that you want to do is you want to extract, right, all the relevant literature that you have found. And normally I just go to save in Excel, right? After I save in Excel, I get a list of about 549, right? Now I use my inclusion and exclusion criteria. My exclusion criteria, I know the types of papers that I'm not interested in, then I delete them, write down the number that I have deleted so that someone else can, and why I deleted them, right? And maybe they are not relevant to my topic. They are talking about organic synthesis, and I'm not really interested in organic synthesis. So I mentioned I removed 15 papers that were talking about organic synthesis. Then I removed these papers that were talking about this, right? Right. So that is the exclusion criteria. Then I included papers that were written between 2000 and 2020, right? That's the inclusion criteria. Then I included papers that were written in English, right? That's your inclusion criteria. And I included papers that were primary research articles, right? Because I was only interested in primary research. So that's your inclusion criteria. Now, after you've done that, you extract the data. You now read the papers now. You read one by one. Maybe now you have about 130 papers on that topic. You now read them now. From that, now you have the key data that I need. And for example, I just need to know the matrix that they did analysis, the country that the analysis was done, the equipment that they used, and the results that they obtained, right? That is the key data that I'm going to compare when I'm writing my review. Then the other thing that I add is the comments. What are in this section in the comments? I normally ask, what are the assumptions that were made in this study, right? I state the assumption. Then the next thing that I ask myself, okay, what are the trends that they observed in this study, right? Then I make that the trends, right? Then after I've done all that, the next thing that is there is, let's jump into writing, right? I have collected all the data. I know what is going on in this data. I arrange, right, the data now the next thing that I need to do is to start writing. So how do you write when you have done all those things? I like this particular section, right? I think this is going to be key. If you can find the reference that I included here by post, it was written in 2020. If you can find this reference and read what they are talking about here, it's really important. So first is you need to expose emerging perspectives, right? So what are we doing here? When you are exposing emerging perspectives, you need to identify any emerging theoretical perspectives and contrast it with established ones, right? When you read the papers, right, when you compared the results that were obtained and when you looked at the assumptions, are there any theories that are emerging? Are there any perspectives that are emerging from that literature? Now, when you identify that emerging perspective, can you compare it with the ones that have already been established, right? So that you can come up with some new perspectives on that particular research topic. This is really important because it adds to the theory that is already available, and your review will be really important. Then number two, analyze the assumptions. In almost every research that we do, there are assumptions that we make, right? And you need to question those assumptions, right? And when you question the assumptions, then you need to analyze and demonstrate the consequences of those assumptions. My last review, the last review that I've written in here, it was published in Environmental Research in 2020. It was specifically about analyzing underlying assumptions. We looked at publications that have made in a particular topic, and we checked, okay, what are the consequences of these assumptions that have been made? And we found out really these assumptions, they are really serious. They might be compromising the results that people are reporting. So that kind of review it's questioning the practices and gives recommendations for future studies that people need to be careful when they are making such assumptions. And another way we made recommendations, the one way of trying to address that assumption to make sure the results are valid, and we gave that. So it's really important. And the third way is clarifying constructs. So with the clarifying constructs, right, there are some constructs that are there, right, in a particular field. There are some standing things that are there, and sometimes those constructs, they might be ambiguous. So you conduct your review so that you can offer some clarifications, right? For example, let me give, when it comes to bioremediation in groundwater, right? We know that there is a belief that there is a group of chemicals, the polar chemicals, right? That they are going to be readily leached into water, and we expect their concentration to be high. Then you'll be saying, okay, this is the constant that is present in this field, right? But your question, okay, what is the effect of pH now? What is the effect of other humus and all those other aspects that are present in the soil? Are they not going to affect the amount that is leached? So you are now looking at the ambiguities that might be present in that particular field. Then the next is establishing boundaries conditions, right? A good paper that did this was that fast fashion paper, right? There are boundaries that when we are studying fashion and we are studying environmental degradation, those are boundaries. Then when you look at the data that is available, right, on you bought your cloth and then you are going to dispose it, right? And what is the effect on the environment when you do that? It's breaking the boundaries that are present already in that system. Then the fifth way is testing new theories, right? There is a new theory that has been proposed, then you go back to literature that has been published, you test it, does it stand, right? Then theorizing okay, so you theorize, you have the mechanisms that are being used, right? Specific mechanisms, maybe it's related to climate change and the like. Then you come up with some theories, so they're trying to explain those mechanisms. So when you do this, right, with your literature, when you're analyzing your literature, when you're exposing emerging perspective, analyzing assumptions, clarifying constructs, it's breaking boundaries, testing new theories, and theorizing concerning mechanisms. It helps to generate new theories, right? It's a way of really generating new theories, and your review is not, it's not going to be just a summary of what has been done, but it's going to help other people to conduct new research. So this is kind of a review that we need. So we have looked at how the importance of writing, right? The role of literature review, and we have looked at the second thing was if we looked at the process of writing, and here we looked at how do you synthesize when you are writing your review. How do you synthesize in such a way that you generate new theories? So the next thing is we want to look at as we conclude is what are the common pitfalls when writing a review, right? First, we'll look at the process. When you synthesize, you need to come up with an outline, right? An outline is not the title, abstract, introduction, method, body, and recommendation. Those are the elements of a review. An outline is a map that you are going to use when you are writing your review. It's a guide that you use, right? And it's really important that you have this kind of an outline, because sometimes when you are writing a review, there are many authors, right? Someone is going to write a section, another section. But if we are writing in a way that it's not clearly mapped, our paper is going to be disjointed, and it's going to be difficult to read. And in some cases, most likely going to be rejected. So you need to come up with an outline. Each member, each co-author looks at the outline. They see what their contribution is going, where it's fitting in the outline. Right, this is really important when you are writing a literature review, right? You need a clear outline that helps you to be organized. So the next thing is what are the common pitfalls? Sometimes when I'm reviewing a literature review, I notice people just summarize the data, right? The goal of literature review is not to summarize data. The goal is to give a critical appraisal of the data that is available, right? You want to organize the data and give an appraisal so that people can see, oh, these are the assumptions that are being made, and this is the way that we address them. What are the practices that we can engage in to make sure that our work we do is really what is relevant. Then another pitfall that I notice is people think that comparing two studies is the same as critiquing them. Comparison is just comparison. When you compare two studies, that's not enough, but you need to establish the connections or the disparities between those two studies. Why are the results they obtained similar? What is the theory that explains the similarity between those two studies? If they are different, why are they different? Is it because they use different methods? Is it because they were under different conditions? And what needs to be done so that these studies can be harmonized, or they can become comparable when you are looking at it? So that is now being critical and at the same time forward looking. Then another pitfall that I noticed is too much jargon. People like big words, right? And sometimes it's a distraction to people when they are reading. And most of the times when you are writing, maybe say for trends journals or annual reviews, or you are writing a review for Nature, or you are writing a review for Science, they'll tell you specifically, please avoid jargon. And when you use jargon, please define it, right? Don't use a jargon that you didn't define, right? Just assume that people who are going to read it are first-year PhD students, and whatever you're going to writing is going to help them enter into the field, right? And the next thing is you need a big pitfall is people write reviews with no diagrams, right? Diagrams help to clarify whatever you are doing. They are just a tool that we need to use. You need figures, you need tables, right? And the more, the better, right? And this is really important when you're writing a review. So to summarize everything that we needed to do, that we talked about, is a good review needs to be authoritative, it needs to be accessible, it needs to be balanced, and it's a synthesis of an emerging or a progressing field, and it offers prospects for a future research. So when we are writing our reviews, we need to ask ourselves this question: are we writing with enough authority? Is it accessible? Is our critical data balanced, right? I'll give an example of a recent review that I wrote. The comments that I got from the peer reviewers was, you know what, what you're doing is important, right? But you were not fair to the work that has been done. And looking back, I agree. I was too critical of work that has been done, right? So they encouraged me to be balanced, demonstrate the positive that work that has been done, and now critique it, right? So you need to make sure that it is balanced. So I hope we all enjoyed the talk, and in conclusion, I want to thank these wonderful people, from my research team to my research family, my family, who have been helpful in everything that I've been doing and really supportive in my writing. So right now, I'll take any questions. Are there any questions? You can write your question, then I can read it. Okay, the first question is coming from Blessing. Blessing is asking, this is so specific in meta-analysis, explanation of quadras 2. I assume this is in health, right? This is a type of, when you're conducting meta-analysis in health, and I don't want to mislead you. This is quite specific to health. My research is not related to health. I might mislead you in this regard. Then the second question is on, it's coming from Teddy. Teddy is asking, what is the difference between a scoping review and a critical review, right? A scoping review and a critical review. So like I mentioned, right, with scoping review, the difference between the two is the scoping review starts with you at the research topic. Like I mentioned, you are looking, let's say, at impact of COVID, right, on the environment, COVID-19 on the environment. Then you want to identify research questions that can be addressed. You want to come up with the scope, what has happened right now, and what can we do in the future. So a scoping review is about coming, its focus is on coming up with research questions. You need to identify research questions. And most of the times, this type of review on scoping reviews, I noticed that people, researchers, they come for a conference or a seminar or a workshop. And at that workshop, they've got a list of questions, then they'll be asked to weigh them in priority. So you are trying to prioritize research questions. So that's more of a scoping review. Now, a critical review is you look at a research topic, right? Then you identify all the literature that have been written in that particular area. Then you want to determine the quality of that literature, right? Not only the quality, because you want to look at the assumptions that are being made. You want to look at the constructs that are present. You want to look at identifying the knowledge gaps, right? And in all these things, you do them so that you can come up with propositions for future work. So that's more of a critical review. Then Patrice is asking, what is the difference between surveys and reviews, right? Surveys, the surveys is conducted to collect data, mainly for primary data. Reviews are looking at the primary data that has already been collected. So a survey is more of a sampling tool, and reviews is a way of analyzing the published. So I hope that answers that question. Okay, next question is coming from Amaka. Amaka is asking, scoping and making, the difference. Like I mentioned, scoping is you are starting from a topic, then you want to come up with research questions, and those research questions, you want to prioritize them. You want to identify which one is more important, which one is more urgent, and all those things, right? That's scoping. Mapping, on the other end, it starts with the question, right? You start with the question, then you want to explore the concepts around that concept, that question. And the goal here is you want to identify the gaps, the literature gaps, the knowledge gaps that are present in that area, right? And Olayinka is asking, it happens to me. Olayinka is asking, what can be done to some reviewers who, while criticizing authors, make some profane language like "your work is a shame"? I encountered that type of a reviewer the first time when I was a PhD student. My co-author actually cried because they were really mean, and we asked the first senior author to write a letter to the journal to tell them that this reviewer, whatever they are doing, is not appropriate, right? And it's really important. If they are not appropriate, you can contact the editor, the one who is handling your manuscript. Write them an email and ask them, how do I address this? How do I address this particular? And sometimes that particular reviewer can be banned. Next question is coming from CISO. Do we have any tool or method that can help to improve our technical skills and writing skills of review papers, especially meta-analysis? Meta-analysis is mainly done in health. We rarely conduct meta-analysis in environmental science in my field. So I can recommend, I know there is a course on Coursera on writing meta-analysis. That's one. Then there is another course from Johns Hopkins University. It's free, on writing systematic reviews and meta-analysis. It's available from Johns Hopkins University. I'm forgetting the website, the exact website. Then a question from Didi. Okay, so this is a different type of journal, right? That a review. The one that I'm talking about, the review articles that we're talking about are the ones that you write for publication. The one that Didi is talking about is peer review. Didi is asking, how do I go about it? The first thing that I normally recommend is you need to get formal training on peer review. You can get it from Pablons. I'll share the link right here. It's called pablons.com. You can sign up. Sorry, let me send to everyone. It's called pablons.com. You can sign up on Pablons, then you take lessons on how to write a peer review. If you want a mentor, one of the members of the group can help you, or you can ask me to be your mentor. It's fine. So after you have done that, you can go to the journals.elsewhere.com under bioresources technology. Then you request to be a reviewer. You'll get reviews from there. Then the next question after Didi is from whom? Okay, it's from Yusuf. Yusuf, if one is writing in a field like the social sciences where theories are quite relative, how can one coordinate the literature search? I just want a little context here. Okay, so you are writing for social sciences and the theories are relative, right? How can one coordinate the literature search? Now, this is interesting because one way I have done when I'm writing in a topic where the keywords are not like really clear is what I do is I go to the top papers that have been published in that particular topic, right? Then look at their review, at the papers they cited, right? And you also, that is backward, your backward tracing of the sources of the work that has been said in that particular paper. Then you do forward. What are the papers that are citing that particular paper? Now you have a list now coming from backwards and forward. Then you identify another one, you do the same, right? So you, at the end of the day, you'll compile literature on that particular topic, right? So it will help you to gather enough literature on that topic, which is sufficient for writing a literature review. I hope that will answer it. Then from Olainka again, what can be done to some reviews who, while reviewing your work, rubbish it with the prophet? I've mentioned that, right? What is a mini review? Normally a mini review is less than 3,000 words. You're just writing a short review, and mini reviews are normally written for emerging, like topics that are highly emerging, like you know what's happening with coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, right? You can write a mini review on that topic. It's emerging, and if there's sufficient, maybe 10 papers that have been 10 primary research that papers that have been published that topic, maybe you can write a mini review on that topic. Then Suleiman is asking, please, my question is on an average, how many papers should one read? And oh, that's a good question. My last review paper that is under review right now, I think I went over at least 300 to 400 papers to write that particular review. And that's a very good question, because it moves us to another important thing is you need to have a good reference management and bibliography system. Reference management is where you keep your references in an orderly manner. A bibliography, what I normally ask when I'm working with my student is you compile all the list of, like the Excel spreadsheet that I show you. It has all the papers that are on that particular topic that I'm reviewing on right now, right? Then I put a section on which contains the keywords that are like pertinent to that topic or the theme of that particular paper. Then the next is the key takeaways. When I read the paper, what are the key takeaways? So on all those 400 papers, I'll just go off all the way through them, then write comments on each one of them. So writing a review is not really like just writing. You need to be really thorough when you are writing it, right? So on average, I'll recommend reading between 50, at least 50 papers. That's the average. Then Olainka once again is asking, do you have a top-rated professor or in your work automatic to be accepted? I avoid doing that. I avoid having top professors when I'm writing my work. They are already established. I would rather work with Olainka or Tosin, who's not known by anyone, than work with someone who's famous, because it's not, when that paper is published, it's not because of its quality, but it's because of the name that is linked with that paper. So if you look at all my review papers, the review that has a top name, it's the first review that I ever wrote in water research. Why? Because the top name was my supervisor, Dr. Schlenk. He was my co-supervisor, and he's known in the field. So that's the only review that you'll find that I wrote with someone who is famous. The rest I wrote with my friends, people who are at the same stage with me in my career. All my reviews are with those kind of people. I avoid the famous people. Then the next question, under which of the review does the traditional review fall? The traditional review is normal, it's called a narrative review. You're just narrating what has been done, right? It's a narrative review. Like the paper that I selected as number 3, it's an example of a narrative review. But we avoid narrative reviews because they contribute little to the concept. They are good, like in annual reviews, they prefer narrative reviews, right? So for a young, for researchers like me and you, I encourage writing critical reviews, meta-analysis, and for those guys who are in health-related fields, right? You need to go for meta-analysis and systematic review. For the rest of us, we are fine with our critical reviews. We can write critical reviews, that's fine. Avoid the narrative reviews. Approximately how many review papers should one write? I don't know how to answer that question, right? Because like we mentioned, you need to be an authority in the field, right? So if you write 5 reviews in 1 year, does that mean that you are authority in 5 different areas, right? Those are some of the questions that we just need to ask ourselves. For me, the reason why I managed to write 4 reviews is because I came from a multidisciplinary background. I did environmental toxicology, right? Which meant that I need to look at different, my background is multidisciplinary. I did environmental chemistry at the same time doing biology. And at the same time, I was doing other courses on toxicity, right? So I came from a multidisciplinary background, so I could write reviews in different areas. So yeah, but you need to be careful. You can't have 5 reviews and 2 research papers. That's not practical. So for my case, I try to make sure that my research papers to review ratio is maybe needs to say between 1:4 or 1:5. Stephanie mentioned something which is important. Some institutions discourage writing reviews. They don't count as papers. I'm not sure about that. That's quite interesting. This is the first time that I've heard about this. Is really interesting because when you write a review, you are demonstrating that you're an authority in that field. So a review is kind of like well considered. So if your school doesn't encourage writing reviews, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't write a review, because a review is kind of, like I mentioned, it's a way of mentioning that hey, I'm here, I have conducted extensive work in this area, and I think I'm an expert in this area, right? So that's really important. You need to just continue writing even if they say they are not important. The paper on microplastics, I'm going to share my, that's coming from Annie of York. I'll share that paper. It's really a good paper. I'll share it. Oh, this is a good question from Onome Ona. They're asking, how is the general review different from a commentary and a letter to the editor? A commentary is written on a specific topic or specific, it's shorter. Normally a commentary is less than 1,000 words, right? And in some cases it's 300. And the letter to the editor is just exactly as that. It's a letter to the editor. And in most of cases for nature and science, they say 300 words. Then a commentary, it sometimes can be 1,000. It can be for a specific paper. So it's totally different. Joe is asking a very good question. Do you identify a research gap before or after searching for the materials from the review? You can't identify gaps before unless you have been conducting that research for many years. We do literature search so that we can be able to analyze the literature so that we'll be able to identify the gaps. So the first thing is the literature search, then analysis of the literature, then during the analysis, you identify the gap. Didi is asking about mentee. Is it related to Pablons? Can you answer me? Is this related to problems? Okay. So I think I've answered all the questions. So regarding there are 3 projects that are going on right now at Organization of African Doctors. The first one that I'm aware of is on microplastics. This is important. So when you're working on your microplastics, right, we are focusing on Africa. I would expect that it's a simple search. You go on Web of Science and Scopus, just write microplastic, right? Instead of putting the S, you don't put the S, you put an asterisk. Then you search. Then in your search, you select studies from Africa. And there is a problem. If you put Africa, you might not get the data that you're looking for. So what you might end up doing is you might look for Nigeria, Algeria, Namibia, Guinea-Bissau, Chad, Central African Republic, for all those 54 nations of Africa. So you'll be able to get the data that you want. Then again, sometimes microplastics is written micro-plastic, so your search need to include that as well. So when you compile the data, I know it's going to be less than 100 papers on that. So you put them on Excel, write notes against each one, or arrange them into themes or contents. Then you write notes on each one of them. Then Anorio is asking, the line of a review with research paper might be similar as far as I can assess. Often a paper could be stated as a review or technical. What's the clear difference between a review and a research paper? Okay, that's really important. Like I mentioned, right? A review, in my opinion, I put my opinion here, is it's research. You are going to conduct a desk research. You are conducting the research, but on your desk. You're not going to the field, you're not going to the lab or something, but you're conducting the review on your desk. So a review is it's a research, but it's not primary research. Even if your excellent review came up with new theories, came up with new concepts, it's not primary research. Primary research is where you get out and get primary data that you analyze. So a research paper, generally what is called a research paper, is actually an original research article or an original research paper or primary research paper. Whereas a review is a research paper, but which analyzes the primary data. That's kind of the difference. The review is looking at the data that has already been published, whereas the original research is looking at the data that hasn't been published. Anthony Bess is asking, do you have to be known in a field before writing a review? I would say if to be known mean you need to be kind of famous, that when your name is dropped, people easily recognize it. I would say no, you don't have to be famous. You don't have to be popular in any way to write a review. But having said that, you need to be an expert in that area. What do you mean? I mean by expert, you need to have conducted research on that particular topic. You need to have conducted primary research on that topic, right? But if you haven't done, and you have got a supervisor or a senior researcher who is saying, okay, carry out this literature review, right, and I'll be guiding you, then you can write it, as long as you have guidance of a senior researcher. Another question is coming from Hamido. Meta-analysis. Again, I'll refer you to experts in that area. Recommend, can you look for Coursera? There is a good course, particularly on meta-analysis and systematic review. It's free. You can look at that. If you can't find that, you can look for futurelearn.com, right? Look for courses on meta-analysis, or you can go to Johns Hopkins. They have Johns Hopkins University. They have a course on meta-analysis. So this is more specific to people who do health research. So us environmental science guys, we are not good in that. Joy is asking, can a critical review be written by someone who's not an expert in that area? The short answer is no. You can write it, but you won't be able to organize, evaluate, and critically appraise that literature, right? But if you have a senior researcher who is an expert in that, they can help to guide you in doing that. So yes, you can write it if you're not an expert, but with the guidance of a senior researcher. Then Tosin is asking, how can we have free access to Web of Science? I'm not sure if you have an institutional email, like an email that ends with .edu, right? That is .edu.ng or .cn. You can access Web of Science, right? You can just log in, go to Web of Science, then you can access it for free. But if you can't, this is kind of challenging. It's really challenging. In my case, okay, I'll give you a tip of what I do. To access databases, I'm going to write it here. To access databases, I'm writing message to everyone. To access databases, try to sign up for review, for peer review to Elsevier journals. So if you sign up to be a peer reviewer to Elsevier journals and they ask you to review for them, they're going to give you 30 days access to Scopus. They'll give you 30 days free access to Scopus. So if you sign up, if you review at least 12 papers a year, then you will know that you will have the whole year, you will have free access to Scopus, which is a very good database that I normally use. The next question is on how to extract. Okay, let me do that. Someone is asking how to extract data on the Web of Science. So let me go to Web of Can everyone see? Okay. I'm trying to access my Web of Science here. I don't know what happened. Okay, so let's say we are looking at micropollutants, right? Emerging pollutants. So you don't put S, just put an asterisk. Then you put these apostrophes, right, to show that you want the full term emerging pollutants. Then you add a row, and you said you are interested in groundwater. Then the next thing that we're interested is in remediation. And sometimes let me just not put emerging pollutant, just put pollutants, right? So that we can sort out later. So here, if you can see that there are around 5,000 papers on that topic, right? Now we say, okay, maybe you want to look at studies from 2005. You just select 2005 to 2020. Right, then you say refine. That's an inclusion criteria. We now have 4,000 studies. Then the other thing, okay, we want primary research only. You select, then you pick language. We want English only. What languages? And select English. Then you refine. Now we have 4,000 papers, right? This is still a lot. That means our search criteria is not clear. We add imaging. Right now we have around 140 papers on what? On pollutants, groundwater remediation, and which are imaging. After you do that, you can either export here, right? Is different other files. Then you pick the type of file that you want, or alternatively, you create a citation report. When you create a citation report, you say save to Excel. Then just say all records. Then you export. So when you export these studies now, you export them. You know, the next thing is you open and sort it. So that's how you go about it. Any other questions? Helen is asking, how bulky must the review be for it to be accepted? Avoid being bulky. A good review, for example, in environmental science and technology, they want the review to be 7,000 words, between 7,000 to 10,000 words, right? And for critical reviews, journals that are under the critical reviews name, they recommend up to 10,000 words maximum. Then for trends journals, they only want papers that are 3,000 words. So you need to follow the guidelines. Avoid waffling, just go straight to the point and make sure that it's really succinct. Okay. Okay, sorting the Excel document, let me open it. So normally, oh, I didn't save everything. Let's see. The one that I downloaded didn't have all the papers. So let's see. So it's when you are sorting, it's just removing the data that you are not interested in, right? Then, okay, so this is the Excel, right? So I don't care about this. I don't care about this, but I want the search string and the titles. So I just remove this. Then the next thing is all this data is not necessary, right? So you just delete. This is not necessary, you delete it. This is not necessary as well. So this is just the sorting part. Then one is the publication date, right? And the DOI, you are going to use it when you're looking for that publication later. Then this one, you already have the date, so you don't care about this one. So next thing is you remove this, right? Then now what we want is the titles, right? You now go title by title, right? You just highlight, maybe these are the studies that are similar, right? You highlight them or write note, sorry. You highlight them in a way that you want, right? Maybe here you just add the comments. Then another similar studies, you highlight them, something like that. Then at the same time, you go one by one, right? Those ones that you don't want, you just put a different color, right? You don't want that one, you put a different color, and you put a reason here, not related, whatever reason why it's not related to that. So that is all on sorting. Okay. Yes, the other thing is it's a new practice that I'm trying to adopt, right? When I collect this review, these references, I'm going to add them. If I don't cite the references or whatever reason, I put this collection, I edit as supplementary material that's making my data public. And people who look at this and the comments that I'm going to put, they will be able to repeat the study that I've conducted. So it's a way of making sure that it's accessible to everyone. Then Joyce asking, can someone only use Web of Science? Web of Science is recommended, but you can also use Google Scholar, but you need to be careful because there is a lot of unreliable material on Google Scholar. But I normally use Web of Science and Scopus. Those two, they're kind of really good. Web of Science, if you can't access it when you go back home, like I said, I recommend you need to sign up on this Elsevier journal so that you can get, free access to Scopus. That's the reason why I continue using Scopus right now. When I review, I get free access to Scopus. Then Musa is asking how best to add a reference directly to Mendeley, including the PDF file. Normally what I do is just drag and drop. Where is Mendeley?
Wow.
So let me give an example of so I just do drag and drop. Let's say I go to Mendeley, I have different folders, right? Let's say I have a folder called OAAD, right? I go to this is the document that I'm interested in, drag, then drop, right? When I do that, it's going to give all the bibliographic details for that paper, right? So I just go here and check if it is really accurate. If it's not, there is a way of clarifying it. I just click under DOI, I just say update, then it updates. That's it. So that's what I normally do. Oh, directly from the journal site. Yes, you can. If you look at, there is this, what do you call this? I downloaded this from Mendeley, right? So I go directly to, let's say, to a journal. You go to the journal or whatever you want, right? So when you download this, it's a plugin that it's not really a plugin, but it's for, yeah, it's a extension, mainly extension it's there for Mozilla Firefox and it's there for Chrome. So I open this, right, this paper, then I just go here on Mozilla. I don't like doing that because it asks me lots of questions. You have to sign in first, then it takes a while. Then after signing in, you just save, like right here, it asks me which way do I want to, I just want to save this one. So yeah. then ask me where I want to put it and say maybe CPCs. Then I just add together with the PDF. So that's it. After some time, if you go to that folder called CPCs, it should add. But it takes time. Okay. Yes, it's called mainly web importer. Yes. Okay, any questions? No more questions. Right now, I'll tend to so Elijah, do you have anything?